Welcome, everyone. We're so happy to have you here at our Q&A today, focusing on our filmmakers in the category of shorts, generation to generation. I'm your lovely moderator, Hannah Johannes. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the program manager at the Real World Screen Institute. Before we get started, I want to start it off with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and has always been and is now also home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to our filmmakers. First up, we have Joshua Maikawa for Christopher Kim. If you'd like to wave your hand to say hello. Thank you. Next up, we have Atefeh Khademolreza for Com's sister. Next up, we have Bisong Taiwo for The Test. We have Lorna Kidjo for Fester. Next up, we have the lovely Paula Nair Dormiendo for On the Fence. And last but not least, we have Wanjuru Jendu for Stray. Thank you so much for joining us today. And so first off, I wanted to ask each and every one of you, considering that your shorts were under the category of generation to generation, what is generation in all its intricacies and complexities mean to each and every one of you? Who would like to start us off? Lorna?
Why? Because my face,
Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking, wow, that's an interesting question. I think the first thing that came to mind was differences. Like that's when I'm thinking of generations, I'm just thinking of differences and how we all grew up in different circumstances that shaped us into the different human beings that we are. Yeah, that's the first thing that came to mind.
Awesome. It was a great answer. Bisong, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think of multiplication in a way, because I've been reading my father's history. He's kept records of the history of our family, and just seeing how each generation of the family tree has multiplied financially and spiritually and all of that from the previous generation. And here I am now. I just had a daughter a few months ago. And
that's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. And now it's like the responsibility is now on me to give her the abilities to keep multiplying. So yeah, it's just something that came up.
That's awesome. That's a key word too when it comes to generations, is responsibilities, right? How do we handle it? How does it get passed on? What are the impacts, the insights to it? So what are your thoughts, Joshua?
I kind of think of like different values that get passed down from generation to generation, and the ones that also may change from generation to generation. I think just the two of those are quite interesting to look at and compare.
Yeah, that's interesting. You said that values and how it factors into how it's passed on. I think that has a huge impact as well. What are your thoughts, Paula? Great insight, Joshua.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree with everybody. I think the first word that comes to mind is intergenerational, and what gets passed down from my parents, especially after they had immigrated from the Philippines, where I'm from, what traditions and like what Joshua said, values, faith that's passed down, what things that I want to be able to pass down to my own kids one day, and what new things I can bring to that as well from my own perspective, having lived here for so long.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. What about you, Atefeh?
Yeah, for me, it's also like differences and also similarities and how we can have a better life. I mean, we will get some hardship from our previous generation, and then we need to deal with them and how we can make everything better. I mean,
Right.
in our life. So it's like this for me,
Yeah.
especially in contests that I try to show it. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And beautifully said. Awesome. What about you, Wanjuro?
For me, I think about it in terms of remembrance, memorialization.
Mm-hmm.
There's an African saying, until the lion learns to write, the story will always be the hunter's.
Yeah.
So I look at it as a way for us to keep, my grandmother couldn't read and write, so I was her
Mm-hmm.
voice, but she was a Mau Mau warrior, survivor of the colonial war in Kenya. So I was her voice. I was her remembrance. I was her memorialization. So I think as filmmakers, we have opportunities our parents and grandparents didn't have, but the
Yeah.
difference is also our experiences and stories from them inform. They don't define our stories. They inform our
Mm-hmm.
stories and inform the world. And so that's the way I look at it. I plan to be a very, very loud lion. And that's the thing I look at, is that what from the past can I make sure that the future doesn't forget?
Right. Right. Very well said. Thank you so much for sharing that. In particular, when I was watching your film Stray, you can see with your film, and perhaps you can expand on it. I can hear your roar in terms of when you touch on the subject in your film. When it comes to missing children, for example, and can you please expand your choice in terms of using the genre horror and how you used horror to explain or expand on what is that issue of missing children that are not being given that media coverage, especially with what's going on in the world today. Um, if you'd like to expand on that.
Yeah, it's a conversation I had with the writer.
Mm-hmm.
Stray is a horror, but it also has a fantasy, almost fantasy look and feel to it.
Yeah.
And a lot of parents, when they talk about their children being taken, just reading and interviews and watching interviews, they say it feels almost surreal, out of body. And so with Stray, I feel like horror is where people pay the most attention, and it's also a way of making the audience pay attention without them going, oh, not this story again, which unfortunately as people of color we get that, not another
Right.
story of a woman being assaulted, not another slave movie, not another Holocaust movie, but those stories exist and they existed for
Mm-hmm.
years. So with Stray, one of the things we realized in just watching some news coverage was, the ice cream truck. We wanted to, my editor on Stray is actually a picture trailer editor at Universal. So he cut the trailers for Get Out and Us. He actually did the remix on I've Got Five on it. So I like that take on something so familiar becomes so terrifying. And for me, I've never understood the ice cream truck. I always watch parents let their kids run out with a $5 bill in their hands. And I'm just like, you sent your child out to this big truck that can,
Right.
that might not come back. And so I wanted to pick something that was so familiar to parents that every
Mm-hmm.
parent, whether you're in Beverly Hills, whether you're in East LA, that you can relate, that the ice cream truck goes through every neighborhood. But it's also a sound that is so familiar to children and
Yeah.
seemingly safe when it isn't. And that's what Stray
Mm-hmm.
wanted to address, that, sometimes it's not strangers grabbing these kids, it's the very people in your community doing that and causing these ripples that are going on. And also, horror makes people sit up and pay attention. I had a lot of people
Yeah.
who said they went and did the research on the numbers of missing Black girls, and like, look at the situation of Gabby Petito right now. They found
Mm-hmm.
her, but at the same time there've been 70,000 Native Americans missing from the same area. So it's kind of like, who are we looking for? Who gets picked, who gets to be
Right.
on the cover, who gets to be on the milk packet. So that's what I wanted to do, is that Hitchcock aspect of it can happen to anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for expanding on that. That was that's you really touched on such an important issue that's been happening for years, for generation to generation, as tied with the theme, with the coverage of BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color when they go missing versus white counterparts. So I'm glad that you explained that and expanded on that. I wanted to go to Atefeh, and I wanted to ask what inspired you with creating Comb Sister?
Actually, I always love to make some movies about women. So women is always my favorite subject.
Yeah.
So it was like a project that I wanted to work with China. So my producer introduced me Calm Sisters community in China that that existed in like 300 years ago in China, and that they were a kind of movement against of forced into arranged marriage. And when I read about them and during the searching about these subjects, I found that it is very important to show them and tell the audience that still we have many forced marriage and early marriage in all around the world. Yeah, that's why I selected this subject.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for sharing, and that's awesome. Thank you for sharing and just explaining, because this is how we learn, right? And I love how each one of you have used filmmaking to open and to give insight on the different themes that you covered. So it's really interesting. So thank you so much for sharing. Joshua, while watching your film, Christopher Kim, I wanted to ask um, how you use your film to interpret parental and child expectations. What was your take on it when you were filming the for Christopher Kim?
Yeah, well, that's kind of sort of, I guess, what the whole movie's about is that expectation of a parent with their kids. And for me, growing up, some of that came through like just taking piano lessons and having to do piano exams. So the story's kind of based on some of my experiences, but I know that a lot of other people I know who are also Asian Canadian have also have shared. And so I think that to me was a bit of a universal conflict that other cultures as well can relate to, maybe in some other ways. But yeah, for me, just dealing with this, having this kid try to live up to the expectations was really important to portray.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And speaking of expectations, Lorna, I liked your title, Fester, of how things were slowly festering through your film.
Right.
I'm noticing, like, with the horror and the little, like, the gore and stuff, like, I'm really happy to see more BIPOC folks not being afraid to approach that genre. And it's good to see more inclusivity as well. So, what sparked you to create Fester, and where did you get the origins of the idea, the story? Was it based on something personal or something that?
Yeah, I mean, it was based on something personal, my relationship with my mom. Obviously, it is a condensed version of that in 13 minutes.
Yeah.
I also wanted to paint a bit of a grotesque picture of family dynamics. So it's definitely really, like, it's inspired by my life. And I wanted to touch on I guess, the trivialization of how we communicate within family dynamics, and how, well, we don't actually communicate. We do communicate, but not the right way. And by doing that, we pass on trauma. And I liked to use fantasy to also make those wounds that we inflict on the people that we love very, very tangible in the case of my story. So that's what it's about.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing.
No problem.
And Paula, so for your film, I'd like to talk about identity. You explored the topic of identity in different perspectives. Can you talk a little bit more of what it was about, and more like I thought it was really I found it really interesting to hear a different perspective. So, what does identity mean to you, and how each person expressed who they are or what they think identity means?
What identity means?
Yes.
Oh, it's
You.
a
Yeah.
big question.
I know I get philosophical today a little bit.
I think it's always going to be something that came up while making the film, is that I think was very clear was that identity will always be an ongoing journey. A huge part of what I wanted to accomplish with this film is that, people may not necessarily feel like they've solved, their identity crisis in a way, or like their cultural identity crisis, but feel like a part of them, a part of the weight that they've been carrying for so long has been lifted, even for this one moment. Because a huge part of this film really is just about connecting. And I wanted them to, whoever may be relatable to, whatever story or person that they relate to in the film, I hope that they found a community in that through the screen. Because as somebody who's gone through that process and is still going through that process, this film came from a place where I felt like I was alone, and I felt like I was alone in my sadness, in my anger, in my guilt. And making this film has been so cathartic, because I want them to feel like all of what they were feeling are valid, because again, it's never ending, and there's no right or wrong way to go by how to approach it. So yeah, I think identity just takes on a lot of shapes and forms, and again, it changes constantly, and you never know where that change will come from. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing, and thank you for not only just sharing, but sharing your vulnerabilities, because I think to make a film and share it based on your personal experience or just based on your authentic ideas and who you are takes a lot of courage. So I admire each and every one of you to making not only stories, but also giving a platform to inspire other filmmakers who possibly thought about sharing or creating other films. What advice do you have for other filmmakers who are thinking about perhaps creating films that are based on their personal experience or their ideas? What are your thoughts on, or what advice would you give or insight into creating films and so forth for aspiring filmmakers?
Oh, should I answer that?
I posed the question to all. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I think it's exactly what you mentioned is vulnerability. I think, especially with everything that's happening today I mean, that's always been happening in the film industry, unfortunately, but with everything happening in IATSE, even now, I think we need to go forward with and lead with so much more empathy and understanding. And I think a huge step into doing that, which is something that I wanted to put into practice with Fence and all the other projects that I'm fortunate enough to lead, is, if I'm asking somebody to be vulnerable on screen, I have to reciprocate that. It doesn't feel right to ask somebody to put their heart on their sleeve and you just sit behind the camera and expect them to do that. So for every conversation that I had with On the Fence for each subject, I actually started out every conversation by sharing a moment of my own experiences, and anything that might have to have done with the actual theme and topic of On the Fence, I would share that. And honestly, it's a scary thought to bear yourself out there, but I think it really paid off, because everybody on the crew and all the subjects have such a more deeper understanding and respect for each other after having gone through that process. So it really brought everybody closer.
That's awesome. Thank you. Anyone else would like to chime in?
I'll go.
Okay.
I like to tell filmmakers when they ask me that question, your voice matters. As a person of color, it's very, what we see and what we create sometimes are not in the same frame. We're creating stories on characters that we haven't seen ourselves on screen. And so when I find a filmmaker who's doubting their voice, I remind them, we have to live in a white world, so we know almost every version of their stories. So don't let that make you hesitate. And I always tell them, imposter syndrome never goes away. It's that voice will always be in the back of your head. Learn to ignore it, learn to lock the door on it, throw the key away. But if you just remember your voice matters, and whatever approach, you can take an approach on a film, or even, like Stray, we took the myth of the Pied Piper, which was a old German tale. That's the way we approached it.
Yeah.
And why shouldn't that be a Black girl, a Hispanic girl, an Asian girl? It's just every culture has a version of a story. Especially in older stories, there's a version of, like, genies in the Arabic world, but we also have them here in Kenya because of the Arab African trade. So just find the voice, always find a way to remember to be honest to yourself, and the best stories come from a place of authenticity and honesty.
Beautiful. Thank you. Lorna?
I mean, the only thing that I would say is, to add to everything that was just said, that is very pertinent, is to pick the right people to work with you, people that are
That's
invested
key.
in your story, that understand what you're trying to say, and won't put you, because when you're telling a story that's very personal, and when you put yourself in a very vulnerable position, you want to have people around you that will understand that and not make it more difficult than it has to be. So I would just say, and it's not even against those people, it's just you have to pick people that understand what you're trying to say, especially like producers, and, like, I think DPs and the key creative positions are super important to create this closeness.
How do you find the right people, Lorna?
How do you
How do
find
you
the right
know?
people?
How do you discern who is the right?
I think it's about, just because you can't always know how people are going to work with you on set, but before that, it's about really opening up to everybody that you interview or meet, and really telling your story and seeing how that connects with them, and if they understand it. I have had experiences where I really quickly understood that if that person was on my project, I would have to teach them something at the same time as I'm trying to tell a story, which, it's not against them. It's just, I can't have that in my environment when I'm trying to tell something that's so personal. So I think it's just about talking to people and being honest with them from the get-go. And then you can feel it out and decide if it's the right person or not.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'd actually like to add to Lorna's point. Share your resources. As filmmakers, we tend to hold stuff. So my friends and I, we have an ongoing Google spreadsheet. Like, oh, I worked with a great makeup artist, I worked with this. So we always have a resource to dip in, because friendships are based on personality. So if you get along with someone, there's a possibility that your friend will also get along with them on their set. And people appreciate those referrals, and so that's the greatest resource. Is just a Google spreadsheet. Just the minute you work with somebody great, put it in there, and a lot of times those people understand that sometimes the money doesn't always balance out with the art. But if you're honest and upright and be like, look, this is what I can give, and offer a number, any number. I just always tell people, offer a number, because that shows you value what the person is bringing. But I cannot emphasize enough, Google spreadsheets has saved us from hiring the right people and the wrong people. We won't talk about the second sheet, but it exists as well.
Oh, Lord. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Joshua, any advice for filmmakers?
Yeah, just to add on to everything everyone already said, but just finding your own voice, looking at your own life and everything that's happening around you and what you're passionate about. I think being able to take that and turn that into a story, whether that's closely based on your real experiences or loosely based, I think is pretty important. Just to always be curious about what's around you, and take what, you know, makes you sad, makes you angry, makes you laugh, and translate that into something personal.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Joshua. That's always beautiful. That's really great what you said too, because it really hones and caters the cinematic masterpiece. Not only because it's authentic, but it's also showcasing representation, and it's so tailored to the soul. So it's like it's really beautiful to see and experience, and learn and watch. So it's really amazing. Last but not least, the song.
Yeah, just to add to what Joshua said, you have to go out and actually live a life. Whenever my wife takes me out, because I wouldn't leave the house otherwise, uh, some of the best ideas I get come from those adventures, right? And so, yeah, I'll just say, just go out, have fun, take risks, be adventurous, and even the sad moments, as I demonstrated. I don't know if this happens to any of you guys, but sometimes you're going through somewhat tragic circumstances and you're thinking, man, this could make a good movie. But yeah,
True,
that's
true.
just absorb everything and everything could turn out into a movie. So
Yeah. Thank you, Basong. Well said. And from what you articulated, it you can see that you perceive life as an adventure, whether it's the ups or the downs, and that's a very that shows that life is just a learning process as we go. It's not the final destination, it's the journey. As Paula mentioned, when it comes to your identity, when it comes to generational things, in all its glory and all its nuances, whether it's family, friends, relationships, friendships, or even issues that occur in society, how we overcome them, how we share them. I think it's beautiful to see each and every one of your interpretations cinematically, and it's an honor to speak with each and every one of you. Any final words before any top tips or any projects that you're working on moving forward? Oh, Atefeh, please.
I just wanted to add that it's, sometimes we're scared during the process of filmmaking. I think fear always causes that we cannot be creative. So I think we should try to control our fear, and then being relaxed and let ourselves to be creative and find our way during the process, any section. I mean, during the writing, and then on the set, and then after that. And when we try to be open, suddenly we can find the best way to find our voice and communicate with our team. Sometimes they cannot understand us, but if we be calm and be comfortable, we can explain to them and convince them what exactly we want, and then they will understand. I mean, we just need to find how to communicate with our team, and then it would be great.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate that. I also want to hear if I know all your films will be showcased at the Real World Film Festival, which we're really excited to see. But also, please feel free. Now's the time to share if you have any upcoming projects or anything that you're working on that you'd like to share. If you would like to go up first, Lorna. Go
Oh
ahead.
no, I'm working on my second short film right now. We're shooting at the end of this month, so it will probably be out sometime early 2022.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Bassan?
yeah, I was lucky I got into the Emerging 20 program in real world. So we're going through the workshops and I'll be pitching a feature to some execs. I'm really not good at that, so here's hoping. Wish me luck, guys.
You got this. You got this, Basong. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing, Lorna and Basong. Paula?
I recently graduated from Sheridan College, so I finished my thesis. Thank you. I finished my thesis film. It's called The Art of Quiet. So we're hoping to do the festival circuit this year. And so sorry about the music, but we're hoping to do the festival circuit this year. And if anybody wants to keep in touch with it, you can follow our process and us on Instagram at Art of Quiet Film. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing and congratulations, Paula. Awesome. Joshua?
So I just started a master's degree in music composition where I'll be focusing on film scoring. So within the next 2 years, I'm planning on making a new short film and then writing music to that for my final thesis. So I guess that's the next big thing on my plate.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Joshua, and congratulations for pursuing your master's. Your compositions are amazing. So if you need someone to compose your piece, Joshua's your man. All right.
Thank you for the plug.
I got you. I got you. Wanjuru?
Well, I was lucky. Stray got picked up with a feature option by 20th, who were acquired by Disney and Hulu. So we're in development.
That's big.
Yeah, of the feature.
Yeah.
Yeah, fingers crossed on that. But I'm in talks for a different horror movie. I actually took a break when I realized the pandemic was not ending anytime soon. I took a break to stay with family in Kenya, which I hadn't done in years. So there's been a lot of writing, which is nice.
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate to have signed with 2 agents and a manager just before I left. So I'm enjoying having someone else do the grunt work. I definitely, it's a different environment. But I am doing little classes, teaching here, inspiring kids, photography classes with my niece and nephew's school. So that's been feeding a different type of soul, because you forget how many questions kids have, and they have a lot. But it has been nice just being reminded of just, to be in the moment, because as filmmakers, you can be so tunnel vision in trying to get to the next thing. And this was the first time I stopped, and I was like, this is not scary, because the rest of the world had stopped. And now that everything is back and everything, it's at a good pace. But here's hoping to Stray the feature that, we get it done, and you get to see the feature version of what we have for it.
Oh, congratulations. That's awesome. And we look forward to seeing the feature. Because when I saw the short, I was like, wait, where's the rest of this? Like, I feel like I saw a snippet. So I look forward to, we all look forward to seeing your feature. And we're so excited for you. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Awesome. Atefeh?
Yeah, one of my feature script has accepted in Mickey Moore residency TIFF in TIFF. Yeah, so it's a kind of 3 months program, and I will work on my script again with story editors, and I will try to find some producer during this program. Yeah, and it has started from yesterday, and it will be finished in the middle of January. So yeah, for the next 3 months, I will work on my feature script, and also I'm working on another animation. So at the same time, so these are my project that I'm working on them.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Oh, I'm so excited for each and every one of you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us for a Q&A. I'm so excited. And ladies and gentlemen, I present to you our generation to generation filmmakers, Joshua, Basong, Paula, Wanjuro, Atefeh, Lorna. Thank you so much for joining us.